Welcome to the Agent of Wealth podcast with Marc Bautis from Bautis Financial. In this podcast, Marc helps guide you towards financial freedom, ensure you never run out of money, and create a balance in life that prioritizes what is most important to you. Join us for this journey as Marc draws from years of expertise and guest experts to solve the multiple wealth building challenges involved in your financial life.
Welcome back to the Agent of Wealth. This is your host, Marc Bautis. Today I'm joined by a special guest, Elizabeth Rosner. Elizabeth, also known as DrRoz, is a trailblazing founder of DebtFreeDegree with DrRoz, a transformative movement aimed at enabling students to achieve their educational dreams without the debilitating weight of student loan debt. Her unique blend of knowledge, strategic insight, and a commitment to community engagement lays the foundation for a future where generational wealth is accessible to all. DrRoz, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so delighted to be here. I love your show, and the fact that I'm sitting here with you is so exciting. So thank you so much, Marc.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about today's topic of, financially planning for college. I come across a lot of people that their kids are starting to plan for college, and I think it goes through the excitement of it, but also there's a lot of people that are nervous about how we're going to pay for this. What is my finances going to look like after? So before we even get into the details of all of it, maybe can you start by explaining what the debt-free degree means and why is it becoming important, in today's educational landscape?
Absolutely. A debt-free degree was born really in 2005 when I started hearing these students who were taking the maximum amount of loans. And so at that time, loans could exceed the amount of tuition, books, fees, room, and board. So they were taking the maximum amount. Some of them were living off of it. Some of them were partying off of it. Some of them were, buying cars and other things off of it. And I kept saying, you're going to have to pay this back. And one of the most phenomenal things that my parents ever did for me is say, we do not go into debt for education. So there are a lot of other ways that we go into debt. My dad was a CPA, but not for education, because today there's $46 billion with a B, $46 billion in grants and scholarships out there, in addition to the other myriad ways that you can put together a debt-free degree. So that's a little bit of why I believe it's important, and a little bit addressing some of the struggles and stressors that current students and their families are facing.
I see a lot of times with finances in general, people are very selfless to their kids, right? They, maybe I won't save for retirement, but, I'll start saving for education. And then on the kind of reverse side of it too, it's a lot of times I see, their finances are all different, but the parent will say, where do you want to go to school? Oh, is it $100,000 a year, $80,000 a year? We'll figure it out. And you look at the family finances and it doesn't match up. Like you said, your father said, we're not going into debt for education. I see it kind of more on the opposite side where there's just no kind of parameters around it, where maybe having some parameters would help. You can educate the parent, you can educate the student on that, but how does the student develop that mindset where they make it a priority to avoid debt?
Right. Well, I'm so old that I remember at high school honors nights, it would be, how many people, what percentage are going to college? And now that's just such a given that everybody's going to go to college. And that's, someone in a previous episode of yours addressed this, that maybe not everybody needs to go to a four-year school. I'm a huge proponent of that not everybody needs to go to a four-year school. So there's a consideration there. There's all of these things, Marc, that it's what I call, and I didn't coin this term. So whoever did, I've tried to research it. I don't know who did, but I give you credit, but it's the human algorithm. And we're in this human algorithm where everybody in our sphere has student loan debt. They're talking about it on the presidential debates. They're talking about it in, even high school teachers, public school teachers, or a lot of them are carrying student loan debt. Sometimes parents are still carrying student loan debt from their degrees. And so if you're in this algorithm where you believe that student loan debt is the only way that you can get a degree, and tangentially, the only way that you can get ahead is to get a degree, then you can see how this mindset is, therefore I must take the loans. And so for me, I want to interrupt that process. And when people talk about, I just recently published a book and it's entitled Debt Free Degree. And people say, I'm going to give this to every high school graduate that I know. respectfully, it's a little too late. It's a little bit like handing somebody a weight loss book when they've got 100 pounds to lose and they need to lose it in the next 20 days. You know, where you needed to have perhaps not gained the weight in the first place is way back making all of these decisions. And so, yes, that mindset is, it's completely flipping, as you were talking about, that parent's mindset from here's an open checkbook and we'll figure it out, which is exactly what the colleges want you to think, right? The colleges want you to think, take the loans and figure out how to pay it off later. Whereas my system is, let's start with beginning with the end in mind. And the end in mind is not college graduation. The end in mind is your dream job. Because I don't know any parent who says, I want to send my child to college. I want to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars so that they can come home and sit on my couch and play video games.
Yeah. And I think it's pushed all around where you need that 4-year degree, and whether it's the colleges that are pushing it. I think even the high schools, right? Because they want their rankings up. They want to be able to publish the statistics that 90% or X amount percent are going to this college or that college. You mentioned giving that guide when someone graduates high school may be a little bit too late. When should they start really preparing financially for college?
My ideal is starting in middle school. Now, I believe that parents should from day one say, I want to help you achieve every single thing that you want to achieve professionally. And I want to help you get there. And let's get there in terms of education. Let's get there debt free. So that needs to be conversations that you're having at 3 or 4 or 5 years old. I knew I was going to college, and I knew that we were going to have to work hard to do it. And so I didn't know how. And that's the thing, is you don't have to know the how so early, but it's just this mindset of how do you of making sure that you're thinking through that. So I have developed a curriculum for DebtFreeDegree clubs. I've already established my first one. It starts in September. And so my ideal age is middle school. Because if we can get middle school students as a collective thinking, I want to make sure that I don't go into debt for college, then that's how I think we change this trajectory. So I would love to start with middle school students and their families, the community members. I mean, imagine a community that's full of graduates that don't have student loan debt. So what are they going to do with this income when they go land their dream job? There are opportunities for philanthropy. There's opportunities for buying a home earlier, all of those kinds of things. So it really is a community effort and a community benefit. And I don't know if we'll get into this a little bit, Mark, but I am also a certified trainer of nonviolence for the Martin Luther King Center. And so everything that I talk about is undergirded by that philosophy.
Yeah. And I think, like you mentioned, having a community where debt-free mindset, not to be negative, but you take the opposite approach. And I see people coming out with basically mortgage-like size payments for debt. And it's just delaying starting a family, buying a home. Maybe they want to go into entrepreneurship or starting a business. And, it just delays everything. Or on the flip side, you see parents with either their own debt still or taking on the debt for their kids, and it's delaying their retirement, or it's delaying, things, putting undue stress on people. So it definitely has a lot of negative impacts. Like you mentioned, kids should start in middle school thinking about this. What areas of the debt-free curriculum should like a middle school child focus on versus someone that's going into someone that's starting high school, and how does it transition into school and paying for school so that they come out with that debt-free education?
Yeah, I love that question. That's an excellent question, Mark. One way is to understand that students as young as 5th grade can start earning college scholarships. So you have a lot more time on your hands, although each one of us, Mark and I, each have 168 hours a week. And that's how much time a middle school student has. And they have a lot more free time than perhaps a high school student. So thinking about how you're going to spend your 168 hours with this goal in mind. The other thing is there are a lot of schools who rightly so are recognized as being AP schools of excellence. We recently had AP Score Day. There were a lot of people elated about their scores. And for those of you that don't know, AP is Advanced Placement. It's when you take a course, primarily in high school. At the end of that course, you take an exam on one day, and you're scored between 1 and 5. And depending on if your school accepts AP credit, and depending on the score that you received, maybe you receive college credit. In many, many ways, it's a phenomenal way to earn college credit. And it's a big gamble, Mark, because there are a lot of schools that will do 4 classes in the fall and 4 classes in the spring. So you can earn up to 8 classes of credit during your high school year. But if you've taken an AP class in the fall and you don't take the AP exam till the spring, there's a big gap there. And so there are other opportunities for doing credit by examination, for doing dual enrollment, for looking at these things where you have a more holistic picture. And I think sometimes we get influenced by one particular thing, and this is what you have to do. So if you're attending an AP School of Excellence, outstanding, you're in a great institution, and that doesn't mean that AP is the only route for you in terms of college. The converse is true. I recently was speaking with the dean of dean of a college at a university, and I was explaining to her that in 33 states, if you're an employee at the university system, then you get free tuition and fees. So I was saying, this is something that your students could do. And she said, "Oh, Elizabeth, no. I mean, student workers, they don't work full time." And I said, "Exactly. I'm not talking about student workers. I'm talking about an actual 40-hour-a-week employee." Again, going back to, we each have 168 hours. 40 hours a week is 24% of our week. So even if we work full time, we still have 76% of our week that we can spend in class, studying, having fun, sleeping, all the things, right? And her response was, and it was immediate, this incredulous look. And she said, "That would really throw off our graduation rates." Well, yeah. If we're there to meet your criteria for a graduation rate and we're spending hundreds of $1,000s to meet your graduation rate, things are uneven there.
Yeah. So is that one of the, are you talking about students working full-time or the parents working full-time to potentially get, I guess, a tuition reduction or free tuition for their kids?
That example was students. And so that's how I earned my PhD, is I was working for a university system. I got tuition and fees, and any other institution, not even necessarily related to the job that I held. So again, I have 3 degrees, including my PhD, and I only took $1,000 in loans. And that $1,000 came in my undergrad, where I'm so old, we were on the quarter system, and I needed to go summer quarter in order not to drown in credits in order to graduate in 4 years. And I was qualified for Pell Grant, and Pell Grant didn't pay in the summer. So I went to financial aid to get some help with my finances. That's what financial aid sounds like it is for. And I said, "Can you give me a list of scholarships that I can apply for this summer tuition?" And she said, "Oh, honey, we don't have any scholarships, but here's you a loan. You can just figure out how to pay it off later. It'd be $1,000. And that's where my $1,000 came from. And, even though I knew that my parents said we don't go into debt for education, I thought, well, $1,000, it's in the summer, it's a Band-Aid, I'll do that. But that's how quickly that mindset happened. And so that's how I can see it for other people, is looking at that. And so really thinking about where you're putting your time and your energy. Now, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of parents who are working in those institutions very strategically, who understand that if I work here, then all of my children get to go here debt-free or, low cost or whatever. I mean, that's certainly a consideration. I don't want to say better than taking Parent Plus loans, but imagine, if you're working in a full-time job, you're earning retirement, you're getting vested, all of those things, in addition to helping your child go to college debt-free versus taking the loans and, as you said, delaying retirement or that kind of thing.
Yeah. What advice do you have and I come across a lot of people where they'll say, I earn too much money. I'm not going to apply for the FAFSA. I'm not going to do this. I'm not even going to bother trying anything. Are there other financial aid opportunities for someone that falls in that boat, in which I don't even know what that, and I don't think they know what that boat really is?
So there, it's a little bit like those metrics that say, this is what the tax assessor says my house is worth. This is what the buyer says my house is worth. It's like there are all these different metrics. And so it looks like you don't qualify because you make too much money. But then are you looking at merit scholarships? Are you looking at what I call those wacky scholarships? There's a scholarship out there. This is one of my favorite ones. That's the duct tape scholarship. And you can make an entire prom outfit out of duct tape and submit it to them and submit a video and you get a scholarship. I mean, there are all these different ways. Plus, if you are making that much money and yet you're not able to send your child, say, to the school that, is $93,000 a year, are you able to start them off at a community college where you're paying full tuition or something like that? There are all these different ways that you can think about how can I maximize that. Now, if you start as a middle school student, there is zero reason why you can't work hard enough to earn the scholarships and earn all the things to graduate fully debt free. I mean, you've started your on-ramp early, regardless of what your parents are making. So it's a bit of a misnomer. I hear that too. A lot of people will say, well, I'm white, and so there are no scholarships for me. Or I'm, this, or I'm a C student, and there are no scholarships for me. And that's just not true.
As far as like the actual school selection, there's obviously a lot of variables that go into someone picking a school, right? They might want a large school versus a small school, one that specializes in whatever their particular degree or field is. But what about the financial considerations of it? How does someone either include or exclude specific schools? Like, how do they figure out what's the right target school for cost?
Love that. Never been asked that question. I love that question. So again, beginning with the end in mind with DebtFreeDegree, what happens with a lot of people, Mark, and so the way you framed your question, turn it on its head. So I love this. Many people will say, I want this, and also a debt-free degree. And they kind of shove it in there. Whereas what you're saying is, I want to end up with a debt-free degree. Now, how do I evaluate these schools based on that? So one could be, and I have this in the book, where a student goes through and he wants to major in engineering. And he looks at a community college and his state college. He looks at an elite private school and then an out-of-state state school. And he, writes down all the different costs. And it was astounding how different it was. Now, obviously, the community college is the least expensive, and the elite college was the most expensive. However, the out-of-state state college was really in competition with the elite college in terms of cost. And so it's evaluating at the end, if I want a degree in engineering, and all of these factors are in there, plus I want a debt-free degree, what am I able to do? And it's navigating that path and looking at that. And obviously, if you're starting in middle school, you're already planting those seeds for how am I going to investigate a college? What does that look like? Say, for example, you want to go to, you want to enjoy, sports. I'm a huge UGA fan. And so let's say you're all about UGA football. Well, there are colleges around within an hour's distance of University of Georgia that you don't necessarily have to go to the university to still enjoy some of those activities. And so it's being constantly creative of my end goal is a debt-free degree. So how do I work that back? And what does that look like? And having people around you, because I think the other thing that's happened, and this is why debt-free degree clubs are so valuable, is because I think we get siloed, and parents and their students, they just put their head down, or maybe they're talking to other friends, but it's not really this communal effort of all boats rise kind of thing.
How do you, mentioning the club, how does it, how does the community, how does the club become a community? I know there's a book, a course, and I think even like you might have a workshop as well. How do they kind of all fit together, and how does it establish a community?
So the curriculum that I've developed is I have a curriculum for 52 weeks. So if a group says we're only going to meet once a month, then they can pick from that month's, information. If they're going to meet once a week, then I've got information for them there. And it is not only, so let's say you and I are in a club together, and let's say that I'm looking at scholarships and I run across one that's, here's a scholarship if you're a tuba player. Well, Elizabeth is not a tuba player, but Mark is a tuba player. So So then I share it with Mark. Hey, Mark, did you see this? Blah, 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 blah. And then you're understanding not only what it is that you need, but what everybody else needs. The other thing is, there are so many colleges now that are closing. And so it's keeping each other looped in. So you're understanding, oh, this one we may not want to consider because it's so small, it's dwindling, or, it might close its doors or whatever. And so if you're out there kind of by yourself, you might not hear about all those things, but understanding that there's community members. I mean, my ideal advisory board for a debt-free club is obviously somebody from the organization. So if it's a school group or a scout troop or whatever, but it's parents, obviously the students need to be involved, and then community members. I mean, folks are always looking for ways to get involved. And why wouldn't I want my future people who are living around me to live their best life? And so me as a community member, it's incentive for me to get involved as well.
Yeah. With the creation and journey of people going through the club, what has been your most rewarding experience with it?
So I have to be honest, I've only established one club, and it starts in September. So that's the vision. For me personally, in terms of students that I've worked with, one of my favorite stories to talk about is Henry. And Henry's grandmother and I were friends. And she just mentioned one day, as an aside, Henry had this dream job of being a college professor. And that's, off by the wayside. And he's actually quit college, and he hasn't even earned a bachelor's degree. And I said, well, tell me a little bit more. So for your listeners, 120 credit hours is about how many credit hours you need to earn a bachelor's degree. Henry had accrued over 200 hours and still didn't have a bachelor's degree, and had literally changed his major 5 times. He had been in school for 14 semesters, not even exaggerating. And it's because he and his parents weren't, nor the school wasn't intent on obviously a debt-free degree or even graduating with a degree. It was wherever you want to go, whatever you want to major in, that's what we'll do. And so when I met with Henry, he and I strategized a way that he could exit this it was a private religious school. So a lot of the classes wouldn't transfer. So it just was path of least resistance. The easiest path was to get him a bachelor's degree from there. So helped him strategize that. Then I also helped him get a job as a janitor at an in-state institution. And his grandmother was really upset with me about that. And she said, my grandson is not a janitor. I don't understand why you've done this, blah, blah, blah. And I said, do you understand? He was working at a grocery store, and he's now making more money. He has better hours. He has health insurance and vision insurance and vacation time and retirement time. And he's really, really, really bright. And he needs to be on the clock for 8.5 hours, but he can get his buildings cleaned much more quickly than that. So he can literally sit there and get paid to study. Plus, he is in one of those institutions that you get free tuition and fees at any other in-state institution. So that's how he earned his master's degree, completely debt-free, and is working on his PhD. I've lost track of him, and I would love to that's the last I knew, is that he was in a PhD program. So I've even tried to reach out, and his phone number's not working. So anyway, that's one trajectory of how you can do it, and how rewarding it is to watch somebody who's given up. Henry, in those 14 semesters, he had accrued over $75,000 in student loan debt. And there was nothing I could do to help him with that, but I could help him from that day forward. So he earned his bachelor's degree and his master's degree, the rest of his bachelor's and his master debt-free.
All right, Dr. Ross, that's all the questions I have for you today. I want to thank you for joining me on today's episode and discussing the debt-free movement. Where can our listeners go to learn more?
Absolutely. So I have a website for them. It's DrRoz.love. All of my pages on my website end in .love, because I'm all about loving yourself enough to graduate fully debt-free. And I think our world just needs a lot of love in the world, Mark. And so it's DrRoz.love/agent of wealth. And so I'll send you that website. I think I might have already sent it to you. And when you go there, you have a free chapter download of the book, plus an invitation to all of my free webinars. You just sign up and come to as many as you want to. Ask as many questions as you want to. Be delighted to have y'all join me.
Great. And we'll link to that in the resources section of the show notes. Thanks again, Dr. Roz, and thank you to everyone who tuned in today.
Don't forget to follow the Agent of Wealth on the platform you listen from and leave us a review of the show. We're currently accepting new clients, and if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one consultation with our advisors, please do so at bautisfinancial.com/call.
Thank you for listening to the Agent of Wealth podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Bautis Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional financial planning and investment advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investments and financial planning.